I'm super happy to be with you all. As Sean mentioned, my name is Cody DeBacker. I joined Shopify about 4 years ago. I head up our retail engagement team. I'm also the director of our Shopify LA space that was open just about a year ago. It is a space that is open 24 hours a day, almost 7 days a week, where you can come and get free one-on-one help with anything related to e-commerce. If you want to start a business, if you have a business, if you have a business that is crushing like this gentleman's business, or if you have a business that's just starting out, that's what we're here to help you with. And most importantly, though, is I'm here today to have a nice one-on-one conversation with Jake, who started the brand Movement Watches, which just last year was sold for $100 million to Movado. They have completely disrupted the industry that they've been in, and I'm just honored to be with you here today.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Do you mind starting out and just kind of giving us an overview on how the brand started?
Yeah, so Movement was founded in 2013. I was in college at the time, or had dropped out of college at the time, and was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. It was me and my co-founder, Kramer, and we had some previous background in launching different e-commerce businesses, nothing that really gained a ton of traction. It was, $50,000 or $100,000 in revenue in a year, but so we kind of figured out the tools, but we wanted to really think of a brand that we resonated with and something that we could really launch at scale. So for us, we really loved the fashion world, and specifically when we tried to think of like what product really made sense for us and what product had a blank space, watches came to mind. There wasn't a brand that I really resonated personally for a 21-year-old. And so from there, it was kind of figuring out the DNA of the brand and how we were going to launch a brand and be kind of, how do we have leverage over some of the bigger players that were out there. So at the time, you had Kickstarter and Indiegogo, which were becoming more and more popular, but still kind of a mystery of how to kind of launch. And because we had so much time as dropouts in college, we were playing around with just launching different Kickstarters and Indiegogo. So we kind of learned the DNA and what tactics on how to launch a successful crowdfunding business. And then again, with previous e-commerce businesses, we kind of had some of the essential tools to launch a business online. And e-commerce was really a way to be disruptive. Instagram was still just kind of starting off, so we launched on Indiegogo where we raised $300,000 and built the brand from there, and never really ran out to raise any outside capital because we were just profitable, and we really didn't care about any retail focus. It was just direct to consumer, take our profits and reinvest it into the business for product or for different acquisition channels for brand, and it's kind of where we started.
Hold on, I need to understand more how you raised $300,000 on Indiegogo. Like I just, based on the category that you're in, everyone in this room has seen industries be disrupted from socks to bags, but watches is something that I never really saw a lot of people having 20 different watches. Like I've seen watch collectors collect vintage Rolexes and things like that, but how did you get people to spend $300,000 on Indiegogo for a watch backing?
So for us, again, it was, I was 21 and I was trying to build something that resonated with my demographics. So there wasn't a brand that I resonated with. The brands that I loved were the Nikes and Adidas of the world. So we wanted to create a brand that really inspired people. So that was one of the fundamental kind of pillars of the brand. And another thing was being broke. We couldn't afford a lot of the other watches that were on the market. So we wanted to have something that was more accessible. And if we sold directly to the customer, we were able to price it at a more accessible price point. And then just building a community around, living this, aspirational life, and building a full line of watches and sunglasses and jewelry, kind of what we've delivered on today, and building a community around that. And, Indiegogo and Kickstarter is all about building an initial community of people who believe in a brand, believe in a product, because they're basically pre-ordering a product that hasn't been produced yet for a company that doesn't exist, in hopes that this turns into something. And we made promises that we've delivered on, and now we knew marketing tactics that could help get us there, but ultimately it was the consumers believing in what we wanted to build, and that's where it started.
So you feel like you created this community aspect around like a watch brand to get through the noise of an established industry?
Yeah, I mean, out the gate, we used hashtag Join the Movement, which was, it was twofold. It was definitely, again, the brand we wanted to inspire people. And if you look at our Instagram or you look at any of our imagery or content, it's all about kind of, inspiring people and kind of living an aspirational lifestyle. And that was something that we did, and we kind of early out the gate started posting customers' pictures on Instagram and on our website, which at the time, there weren't really two words. Number one, there weren't such thing as influencers, or at least the term didn't really exist. And then even UGC, user-generated content, didn't really, there wasn't strategies around that. These were just strategies that we kind of pulled out of our hat to try and, again, build a community. And now it's a little bit more commoditized, but it was something, and I still think it is something that works really well and did work really well for us back then.
So this Join the Movement community that you're able to build and get back in through Indiegogo, do you think that is what helped you really drive this direct-to-consumer business and utilize e-commerce to win versus going directly into stores?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have leverage in any retail stores, right? We didn't really have capital to invest in marketing or even, enough inventory. We didn't have relationships. If we did get in a store, we got a shitty placement. So for us, it was, how do we just invest? And we struggled with this, to be honest. We went back and forth. We actually launched and were in Urban Outfitters for a few months and then pulled out. And we were trying to figure out what the overall vision really was, because e-commerce was working. And again, for us, that's where the leverage was. So I think, building a community around that, and also the communication flow with your consumer is just fluid. When you own the customer service experience, the site experience, everything on social, the customers interact with you. And versus going into a store, which we've realized isn't always the best experience, and you have to really work harder to have a third-party retailer selling your item who doesn't necessarily know as much about the brand. So for us, it was just a better way to communicate with that customer.
So can you tell me a little bit more about what, as a broke college student, right? I assume you had some time on your hands. What was that interaction like with the first customers of Movement?
I mean, we had a ton of time to we really catered to the early adopters. I mean, we had email blasts that were kind of personalized to the group. I was constantly emailing back and forth. I mean, the way I looked at it is I have to take care of this early, these early adopters and make sure that they're going to refer business or they're going to be lifelong customers. Hello? No, there we go. So really anything that I could do. And again, this was a time where Instagram, we had to decide between Twitter and Instagram, and we chose Instagram just because it was more visual, and doing giveaways and reposting people's contents and just communicating with them a little bit more than I think some of the other brands really thought of it. I think other brands at the time thought of this as just, I don't know, it wasn't as personal. So we just wanted to be authentic and real, and it's why even if you follow us on Instagram, you'll see behind the scenes pieces of the brand where people on the street will call out, hey, that's Robbie from Movement. He's always late to the office. We have these stories behind different customers just because a brand needs to have, it needs to connect with the customer, and we wanted to make sure that there were additional elements that we could do to really build that connection.
So with no experience, dropping out of college, creating this brand, getting $300,000 on your first campaign, how quickly, your Instagram following base is how many again?
So today we have, our men's is about 1 million and our women's is 500,000 or 600,000.
That's wild. So having the opportunity to communicate with as many people as possible, help build this community behind Movement. How did you learn about marketing and advertising during this time, between doing 1,000 push-ups a day or whatever your current regimen is, to communicating with 1 million people on Instagram personally? The guy's, he's all that in a bag of chips, let me tell you that. Can you tell me more about marketing and advertising and how you're able to learn that during the time of the business?
Yeah, a lot of it was self-taught. I mean, I was running our first Facebook campaigns early on, and that was just me reading. I mean, I had time. When you have a startup and you don't have the funding to go and hire a bunch of people, it's up to you to figure it out. So, there were days that we would me and Kramer would go to sushi when we sold 30 watches in a day, and that was the biggest deal. And then I'd figure out, how to market, whether it was on Facebook or Instagram, paid, actually, spend money and paid, and we'd go from 30 to 100 watches a day. And just kind of refining that and And then what I did is, being in LA, I really leveraged the fact that there was a bunch of brands out there like Dollar Shave Club or Honest or various others that I would go and I wouldn't necessarily try and network with the founders because I knew they weren't the ones managing the spend. I'd go and network with the guys running Facebook or the guys buying podcasts or TV, and just I'd really network with those guys, and so it just kind of became a marketing expert through that, and tried to just spend as much time there, because I feel like, I think the older, or some of the older brands really focused on more of the relationships with retailers, and that wasn't an area where that was going to drive sales for us, or that we wanted to really focus on. So it was how to spend acquisition dollars or how to acquire the right customers, and that's really been our bread and butter at Movement.
And also being nimble and being one of the co-founders and having direct access to the e-commerce side of the business, you literally could run a promo with a click of a button, and then you could turn around and put that promo on Facebook or Instagram, communicate with those customers. Whereas if you had one of the more legacy pieces of enterprise e-commerce, I think that might have been a lot more difficult to really allow for that quick growth that you need.
Yeah, I mean, we started on Shopify, and I was just, essentially the CMO for up until we hired an official CMO when we hit about $30 million in revenue. But that was largely driven, we were managing different channels, from Pinterest to podcast to TV to Facebook, Instagram, influencer marketing, and everything still evolves today. I think, I have a different outlook on influencer marketing today than I did, 4 or 5 years ago, but we're very, very data driven. Every ad you see of ours, it's changing a little bit now, but every ad you've seen of ours, we know if that's converting or not. And if it's not converting, then we might refine it and test something different. And if it is, then we'll go and attribute more sales to it, or more spend to it. And some channels are easier than others. Facebook is obviously one of the easiest, but when you get to podcasts or radio or TV, you have to kind of be smart about it. But also the spend level kind of demands more spend to even get data and learning from. So for us, we were able to really scale the business through channels that you could spend less on, like the Facebooks and Instagrams, influencers. And then as we got bigger, we started to play in TV, podcasts, et cetera, where you have to spend $50,000, $100,000 minimum, either for creative or just to spend on advertising.
Yeah, you probably saw that same numbers on like SEO for Google search, especially as you grew. And I'm assuming copycats came into your world and they would jack up the price of those words that you wanted to, advertise to. So this might have been the same thing that you said to Movado when they came in and offered you $100 million to buy this college dropout brand that you started with some buddies. But what advice would you give to someone that is trying to enter number one, the crowded direct consumer space, but even more so like maybe category-based businesses like, you guys started out as a watch company, added sunglasses, added jewelry. I'm sure that there are many other things in the pipeline to help grow your business, but any advice that you can offer to people entering the D2C industry?
Yeah, I think D2C today is obviously much different, right? I think you had a lot of, timing is a big piece of it, and for us and people like Casper and various others, there's an element of getting there at the right time and leveraging certain channels at the right time. Obviously, you have to execute on the brand and product and everything else, but today it's harder to find a product that hasn't been leveraged on a direct-to-consumer model or a more legacy business or brand that's already building out their D2C practices. So I think you just have to find an edge with the product or with the brand, whether it's a celebrity or influencer kind of endorsed or partnered. We've all seen or heard of Kylie Cosmetics. A brand that I love, which is on Shopify, is Gymshark. And they've just really found a white space in kind of, I don't even know if this is the right word, but like bodybuilding community. And I wouldn't even say it's bodybuilding, it's more just athleisure. And there's a few others that are coming up right now that I really, really love and think have huge potential. But there's all these influential people that live in certain kind of subcultures that if you know that subculture well enough and you can leverage that and get there first or build a brand around that, I think there's still a lot of room for success and scale. But it's harder to, you can't just, the mattresses or, food boxes or whatever, those days are kind of
over.
What advice would you have given yourself when you started it, back as a college dropout? Also, what's a food box?
Or like Blue Apron or any of those guys. Advice to myself back in the day. We hired all of our friends kind of at the gate, and that probably wasn't the best idea. So maybe just, I don't know, I was 21, 22, so we definitely weren't, the most responsible there. But I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that.
I think don't hire your friends is great advice. Okay, so if I was a business doing $1 million a year right now, where would you invest your marketing dollars to win?
1 million?
1 million. We'll start at 1 and we'll slowly go
Million,
up.
right?
Yeah,
Not billion.
1 million. Yeah.
Million, okay. Where would you invest your...
But let's say
I don't have the answer for that one.
if you're a billion, I think you got other things. But 1 million in sales in e-commerce, where would you be putting your dollars to grow that number?
I still think Facebook and Instagram or influencers across different channels is probably still the best place. I mean, I'm still seeing success there. Maybe it's not at the same scale, or maybe it's taking longer. But I mean, those are just machines where, you know, the more data, the more people you have converting on a Facebook, Instagram, or you know, even Pinterest and some of these other any of these guys that have, you know, lookalike modeling and are taking your data and conversions and finding more people similar to that have been, you know, platforms that can scale up and scale down. And I think that's, to me, is something that is so interesting about obviously Facebook or Instagram, because you can scale it. You can be spending $10 a day, or you can be spending $100,000 a day. Now it is saturated and it's more expensive, but I still think that there's opportunity there. I still think there's a ton of opportunity in influencers. I just think you have to be creative. It's not just go find someone with 1 million followers and you know, pay them to post. It either has to be more authentic. It either needs to be more authentic, or they need to have a community behind them. So we're playing around with micro influencers right now pretty aggressively. You know, we've seen some brands that kind of have more of a 3-tiered approach, where they have micro, mid-tier, which is kind of that 1 to 5 million, and then celebrities. So, you know, depending on budgets, trying to play kind of in a 3-tier strategy.
Are you using like an agency for these? I ask because like Fashion Nova is a great example of a company that blew up out of nowhere as well. Like you're talking numbers that are exceeding, you know, the Forever 21s of the world, and this is a warehouse in Vernon, California, and a team of like 15 people. And Richard, the CEO, has talked extensively about micro-influencers and how he's able to convert a lot more through these people that have, you know, 10,000 followers versus the $1 million contract he signed with like Cardi B, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, his business is crazy. It's a little different where they have, you know, you can cope. I mean, it's a complete lifestyle brand where you have, you know, you go back weekly or monthly, you know, buying your outfits or Halloween. Like, it's just an insane culture. But regardless, I think that, yeah, giving product to people to post. It could be 1,000 followers, like, you know, depending on what your product is and the price point. Like, we found that giving away a watch to someone at scale, if you give it to 100, you know, a watch to 100 people, they usually, and they post and you track it, they usually convert. And it's profitable, and now it's hard to scale that up, and that's the challenge. I think Fashion Nova, you know, he obviously has a huge team and has people coming to him, and he has so much leverage that he probably can reach out to anyone just because they get free clothing. But the difficult part is like finding someone who wants your product and then tracking it, and then outreach and management. But there's tools out there. They're a little inflated in price, but they certainly work. And I think it's worth to just test and see. Is there product market fit, and then if it's worth, you know, bringing in-house or whatever, trying to figure out a way to scale it, then you kind of take those next steps. Another area that we've kind of been playing around with is TikTok, which truthfully I know little about. I'm learning more and more, but my team's done a good job of just getting there, and that's something we're always trying to put ourselves out of business. So it's just, okay, what's the next channel? Where do we need to be? We bought a PC and an Xbox and a whole gaming setup so that we can just get people in the office, and we'll live stream now when we're gaming with an influencer.
With Twitch?
Twitch, yeah, we have our own Twitch now. So we're just trying, I mean, and you know, TBD on if these are channels that really, really scale. I've even heard that Instagram's going to come out with a TikTok feature that we've seen kind of what happened relatively with Snapchat. So, but it's good to be there. And I think just from a cultural standpoint with your company, I think it's good to be there, understand it, learn. And when Instagram does come out, like you're able to, move quickly into that or take your TikTok audience. And I think we've got TikTok's engagement is just insane right now. I think that's kind of the secret there is, as we've all seen, Facebook and Instagram, you're slowly getting less and less. We're playing around with our post strategy on Instagram as well, where it used to be post as many times as you can just because you want impressions. Now we're scaling back a little bit, seeing what happens if you only post maybe once or twice a week, maybe even less, but you're really posting the content that you really want to do. So we're just trying, and I'm not saying that these are right strategies, but this is the way we're thinking and looking at the data and showing what pictures perform the best, what stories perform the best, organic and paid. So I think that's like the model. It's a test and learn strategy, and that's kind of the way we've always been, is take the data, how do you apply it, and continue moving on.
It's great. I love how you said we're consistently trying to put ourselves out of business, and then you mentioned TikTok. That's my favorite part of the conversation so far. Okay, so we talked about, $1 million, you put your money into influencer marketing and Facebook. Would that change at all as the business grows? So let's say we get to 10, between 10 and 30 mil. Like, are you continuing to go down this road of influencer strategy, or are you shifting priorities at all?
No, I think we're still spending money in influencers. We're still trying to refine the strategy and build it. I think the question, if you were a $10 million business and you were spending a bunch of money in Facebook, I would look at kind of what your CPAs are and how much it's costing you per order, and then if it's a little steep, maybe you refocus it elsewhere. It's about finding kind of the right marketing mix. For us, we have a ton of spend in so many different channels, and every channel's telling us that we're converting at an efficient cost per order. But when it comes out, it's actually not, like we're spending more than we need to be, and we're not making money per transaction. So it's our responsibility to figure out attribution and figure out which channels are the most efficient and which channels you can trust. Facebook will say it took credit for everything. Things like podcasts or TV will take less credit for things. So it's about kind of figuring out the right marketing mix, and that's where we kind of brought in, or that's where I brought in my CMO, who had that background and could really develop a thoughtful kind of model that defines what channels are really performing, and we don't even, we'll manage it per channel. So we'll look and see what Facebook says and what influencer marketing says, radio, et cetera. But we actually are managing our overall spend every single day to a certain CPO. So whether someone went out and came in for free, we're still taking that order and dividing it by the total amount of spend just to see what the actual cost per order was on that given day.
All right. So you've done all this. You've gotten this far. You guys have Movado in your corner now, brand new CMO. What priorities are you shifting in terms of the future of your online business? So where do you think e-commerce is going next?
Yeah,
And don't look to me for answers.
yeah, I feel like you have all the answers. I don't know if I have a great answer for this. I think that for us, we want to be where our customer is going to be shopping. So we're now on Amazon, and we are rolling out into different retailers. Partially because that's what we've always wanted to do. We just didn't have the infrastructure. Movado certainly helps with that now. So we're in a few thousand point of sales globally. But I think that we've integrated Klarna, and we're trying to figure out kind of our international strategy, because when we started, actually the brand was 70% international, and it's slowly kind of shifted. But we want to make sure that the experience for international customers gets better, and we have different currencies now. We have different payment options like Klarna and various others. Focusing on different fulfillment centers. So I think just making commerce easier for people globally is really something that you're going to start seeing. We saw Shopify acquired the
The robots.
The robots. So they're clearly making an effort, and I mean, I think that's it. Just making the world smaller so that someone can, because people are already shopping cross-border largely to the United States. I mean, we always saw that. It's kind of assumed. There's a ton of really successful and popular brands in the United States, and I think that's already kind of a common shopping behavior. So it's just about making that easier so that you can kind of close the gap on people who don't want to wait 2 weeks to get their product, or who want to pay in their currency or whatever it may be. So,
last question, then we'll open up to the audience. As we all address the elephant in the room, which is Amazon, and you've mentioned them a couple times. I know that you and I spoke about this extensively. You were direct consumer. You were only dealing on Shopify. As you look to grow the business, you said you were in over 1,000 point of sale locations, that you're on Amazon. What does that split look like nowadays compared to when you first started?
in terms of just
let's
Amazon
or let's start Amazon to your own direct to consumer sales.
Amazon's still in the single digits. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but it's still fairly small. We kind of manage it that way. I mean, there's going to be a customer who has their credit card already and shipping information, and they just want to buy it on Amazon, and they'll only buy a watch on Amazon. So we kind of have a catalog that's only for Amazon, but anything new, any collabs, anything that we want them to buy directly from us, they have to come to us for, and then we get leverage out of it. So I think that's a big thing, is where you can leverage Amazon and say, hey, if we're going to be on your platform, we held off for a long time, but if we're going to be on your platform, what do we get, or how can you help kind of leverage us? So I mean, Amazon is a scary beast. I think we're all probably pretty scared of them in the room. It's definitely a lucrative business, but it can shift at any point in time. And so I think the importance of really owning owning the catalog for your own website or for your own retail stores, I think is the most important piece of it. And then wholesale for us has just been another way to kind of, what we learned is, even though we were 70% international, and we've had some countries that are very, very, we thought were very well known. As we've rolled out, we've realized that the brand is known, but only known to like a specific group of people. So this is more of like a way to kind of build more awareness, and we're focusing now on kind of strategies to build the brand, not just online, but also offline in retail.
So you're looking at these strategies almost as like additional marketing platforms, in a sense, to be able to go out there and acquire new customers to bring them back to your...
Yeah, it's a way to educate the customer. They see the brand. We want to make sure that the elements in store are visual, and invoke them to go and check us out on Instagram or look on our website. And so it's definitely, I mean, we've only been doing it for about a year, to be honest. We've been domestically, is a different story because we're well known here, but we're in I think 25, 30 markets right now, so.
Awesome.
I appreciate the details you've shared. I noticed that you didn't mention Google one time. Would you mind explaining whether you used Google or any of the aspects of Google in your process?
Yeah, so Google, our main function with Google, I mean, organic SEO related stuff, we've spent some money on it. I think if your business, I think you should have some sort of SEO, but I think for us, really acquiring more customers and social media, I think Google's crawlers and even Shopify is really well suited for Google to kind of, for their SEO practices. But I would say in terms of paid, it's really like us competing against a Rolex or some of these guys that are spending $10, $20, $30 for a click, maybe hundreds of dollars for a click, because it's worth, when someone types in men's watches and a Rolex comes up, it's worth them spending $100, $500 to convert a customer. For us, we just can't compete there. So we do have some, we call it non-brand. Our budgets there are minimal, but where you do want to have brand or retargeting is on Google and display networks. So where someone comes to your website and types in men's watches later, you'll show up first, or if they're shopping relevant terms, you'll show up. So we do spend money there, but it's not an afterthought, but you have to get them to your website first for it to really be crucial. And that's where it gets difficult, because Google will say it's converting people at 5, 10, 50, whatever it is, yet it's not really a great acquisition tool, where Facebook and Instagram and some of these other platforms are really acquisition tools. This is more of how do you get a customer back once they've been. And now, I think where we are interested in, and not necessarily we've seen success, but we've seen some other brands with success, is YouTube and paid on YouTube. So, that's just an area that we're going to be testing more. And I have seen some brands that have done really well there. I don't really have any tidbits there, but in terms of kind of Google's, tech stack or channels, YouTube's probably the most interesting one to me right now.
Congrats on selling. That's exciting. Okay, you said you didn't have a lot of money at first when you were broke, and you launched that Indiegogo. Did you spend any money on the paid ads there to launch that Kickstarter?
So back then there wasn't. I don't even think there was an ads manager for Facebook. So we didn't. I don't think we spent any dollar or any money at all. Other than we didn't really spend any money. Now I wouldn't necessarily go about it today. Today I would. I think you can have a pixel on the site or on the Kickstarter. So I would definitely see if you can. I'm just an unlucky Mike, man. I would try and see if you can figure out a way to spend money. The thing is you just if you're not able to track it, the way Facebook, maybe but yeah, okay. So
what kind of budget would you recommend starting with, like monthly?
It's kind of
like for you guys, when you started doing paid ads, what did you start with?
I mean, we started with minimal. I think it was I'd probably say like, we probably spent $1,000 our first month. And just cause like we didn't want to lose money. Like that was my goal, never lose money. And so we'd spend $1,000 and now my outlook is this, depending on what kind of budgets do you have and how much you can lose or break even. The more money you spend, the more you're going to be able to test. I think I've seen people with very small budgets, friends of mine who have a business, and I'm just, hey, spend $1,000, I'll look at your ads campaign. They'll spend a couple $1,000s a month and they'll test different variations of stuff. They'll have retargeting, prospecting, and then, I think the first month or two could just be, hopefully you're seeing conversions. If you're not seeing any conversions after month one, then stop the campaign. But if you're seeing something come in and it's slowly getting efficient, because Facebook is kind of a black box where they're just going to go and test a bunch of things and then slowly refine it after time. So 3 months down the road, you may see it start to be more and more efficient. I think that's the issue, is people spend $5,000 in month one and see it not efficient. Also, looking at the right reporting tools is another big piece. People look at the day of and see a number and discredit that. So it really depends on what your budgets are. But I would say, a few $1,000s a month and give it a few months to really make, changes to the campaign.
100%. And then also, what did you grow to? Like, what was your largest ad spend?
It was six figures.
It's like 100,000 to
7 figures.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. That's awesome.
Hey, congratulations once again on the acquisition. Just a question around competition. As soon as you guys came into the space, and it happens with a lot of spaces in the D2C area now, there's a lot of competition that comes in there, and there's a lot that floods into the space. How did you guys combat all of the competition that came your way? And there's a lot of copycats and lookalikes that came after that. Was it a mix of discounting and things of that nature, or did you really focus on customer retention and lifetime value and things like that?
Yeah, it definitely wasn't. The discounting piece wasn't, and we've actually seen a lot of those players either heard of kind of like them falling apart or, not kind of soon to be. So I think for us, we do discounts occasionally, but that wasn't a tactic on how to combat that. For us, we do little things like, if we were working with influencers or content creators, we lock them in exclusively just because, we wanted them to work with us and also just for them to be authentic. I think when you find an influencer who really values your brand and they don't want to post a bunch of different brands, I think that's something that we value in an influencer. So that was a big piece of it, kind of locking down specific talent or different content creators. I think just internal talent too, to be honest. Like I was focused on bringing in the best kind of A players to the team, where I feel like some of the other smaller brands, just whether it was just something like they weren't in LA or they were elsewhere, they just weren't able to find that type of talent. Definitely finding different acquisition channels, right? Like for us to be on TV or to be on podcasts, that's a similar place. Once you're on a podcast, they won't sign. You're exclusive to that podcast, so they won't sign another watch brand to that specific podcast until kind of you leave it. And if we leave it, it's probably not profitable, so we don't really care. I know it was tactics like that, but I mean, overall, it was also like innovating the brand, innovating the product, like trying to be one step ahead and knowing that. I mean, we've seen it's been bad for us. I mean, we've seen people completely rip off our exact email templates, our exact. I mean, take our verbiage to a T, take our watches to a T. You know, I mean, sometimes we've pushed back on certain things legally, but for the most part, it's just trying to innovate and you know, be the first movers. And if they're copying us, and they'll always be one step behind.
Thanks, man.
I just had a quick question because you mentioned customer lifetime value, and one of the questions I had is, for your price point, you'd mentioned, I think you started first with men's. How are you guys able to increase customer lifetime value and get your customer, rather than focusing on acquisition so much, focus on that second purchase and then into new categories? Like, if you wanted to expand into other accessories, what were some of the tactics that you did from a retention standpoint?
Yeah, so since we launched, we started with men's watches, then we went to women, then we offered interchangeable straps pretty seamlessly and easily, which weirdly enough wasn't really a big thing that we saw in the industry. And then from there we went to sunglasses, and now we have men's and women's jewelry. We started with, so women's watches was something that was kind of a next step for us. It was something in high demand, and we've actually seen that we have a lot of women actually buying men's watches for holidays. So there's a big gift giving kind of piece of our business. So we have gift boxes and trying to incentivize people to come back and buy as a gift. Having interchangeable straps was another thing. We have like a strap upsell that we've tested and you know, drives a significant you know, incremental revenue. And then you know, sunglasses was another thing where we saw kind of, we wanted to create a more accessible, high quality you know, eyewear that again fit the brand. So some people will now come back and buy eyewear, jewelry as well. So it was slowly introducing that. I would say my advice, I actually feel like, to be frank, when we went sunglasses, that was probably not, that it should have been jewelry before that, just because jewelry and watches, I think, go hand in hand a little bit better. I think eyewear was definitely a different beast. Now we've done well, and it's been good, but there's just different functions and difficulties when it comes to eyewear, whether it's distribution. You know, if you go and sell to you know, a Macy's or a Nordstrom, you can often put a watch and the jewelry hand in hand and sell them together. But eyewear, you know, has a different buyer, a different place in you know, retail. Even on the website, it doesn't necessarily make the most sense as an upsell, where jewelry, you have a picture of the watch and the jewelry. So I think just trying to think about that. We definitely surveyed our customers too, just to get their opinions on, hey, out of these items, what would you want to do, or what would you want next? And eyewear definitely was one of those things, and I think that along with just not having a brand that we really truly loved was another reason why I think personally we wanted to go about it. I think, again, in hindsight, jewelry would have been a better first step.
Thanks. And then I hope you don't mind, I just have one more question. You mentioned testing your content, and I think, you know, when I look at your Instagram, a lot of it is sort of like what's now iconic, where you have these like close-ups on the wrist and different like lifestyle imagery. Were you guys able to, especially early on, how did you guys put a test plan together, or were you looking at like engagement, like clicks or reaches or reach or impressions, as opposed to like what really felt authentic or like more of the storytelling? Like, how were you guys really like developing a content plan when, I mean, not to emphasize like being like a dropout, but like how do you know what you were really like telling in terms of a story, and when you were putting some of that information together? And so much of it has to do with the product roadmap too. So it'd be interesting to get your feedback on that.
Yeah, I mean, we learned throughout the way. I mean, I don't think that if you scroll all the way down, and it might be hidden now, but if you scroll all the way down to see what we first posted, I mean, it wasn't what you see today. It's certainly much more polished. And again, that's why the community piece is so important, because your community kind of helps you understand what's resonating. I've seen a lot of brands who stick to kind of what sometimes the founder wants and is super, super narrow. And I've seen even kind of some older brands do this where they stay super narrow. And we've seen brands kind of come up and come down, and we wanted to make sure that we listened to our community and what they liked about the brand. And we always knew that that inspirational aspect was something that was a core kind of ethos to the brand, but how we implemented that visually and like what was authentic to us and what influencers were authentic. So, I mean, in terms of, yes, we track likes and impressions, but also that's kind of I forgot the right term, but sometimes that leads to like bad practices when you post something that gets a lot of likes or comments, but isn't necessarily the right piece of content that really tells the brand story, and it's getting the likes and the comments for the wrong reasons. So largely when we spend money on Facebook, I mean, or Instagram, really any channel, we're looking at the content and saying what performed the best, and these are thousands and thousands of dollars that are put behind content. But that content sometimes doesn't even live on our organic social, because just because it's selling a lot of product doesn't mean it's necessarily the best representation, or the best storytelling piece. And like, we made the decision early on that we didn't want to just post a picture. We call it watch porn, like just pictures of close, high quality imagery of the watches. We wanted to really tell a story, and there's a balance. I actually think that one of our issues is we've become a little too polished, where I think being authentic and being, I feel like now we're a little scared of what to post and tiptoe around things, but we're trying to get back to, okay, let's post once this week instead of our certain cadence, and just playing around with ideas like that. So there's not one kind of set in stone strategy. I think it's test and learn and what you think works for you and is authentic to your brand.
My first question, because I'm really having a hard time getting on this. Can you tell what the Wi-Fi password is? And my second question is for you. For the influencer strategy, do you guys use like a Hyper or Grin, like a SaaS partner to kind of identify those influencers? Are you using your own like social monitoring platform? Any direction there of tools that can help you identify the right people or kind of vet them?
So we're using Grin. I'm not super close to it these days, to be completely honest. But I've heard amazing things about Grin, and everyone that we've kind of referred them to has been happy. But I think for us, we. You're talking about like getting inbound people or like searching for who to post with or who's. Yeah, I think Grin's probably like one of your best bets. I think just fortunately for us, like because we have a lot of 20-something-year-olds in the office, like we have a good pulse on who's who and who we want to work with or are friends with some of these people. So, but I think Grin and tools like that are probably great to have inbound. I don't know enough about Grin personally to tell you if it's use them all the way through the deal, but at least finding those influencers, I think it's been pretty good for us.
All right, I know there's a few more questions, but we do have to move on. Sorry to cut that short, but Jake is going to be here for a while, as is Cody. Some of the folks from Shopify are going to be in the back during the happy hour as well. But let's give it up to Cody and Jake. Appreciate you guys very much.